to this episode of Knit Pose with the Moon. I am Solène, your host, and together today we will share a moment of creative pose around this theme of the creative power of the dark. So there's a cat here in the garden with us today again. If you've been watching the latest podcast, they are always there. Not always the same cats, but there's always one red cat around at least. And so I'll first start by sharing a few reflections and a few words about the season that we're in and the new moon that we're in. Then 3 creative invitations to invite you to infuse the theme of this new moon into your creative life, and we'll end up with about 10-minute guided meditation to really relax together and take a deep pose. So first a few words about this season and this new moon. So I always like to anchor this podcast in the season that we're in, but you can definitely listen to them at any time. The themes are pretty universal and they are not like reserved only for this specific new moon, and everything is cyclical anyway in nature, so it can resonate at different moments in time. So as I'm recording this, it's June 2021. It's the new moon eclipse in Gemini, which is a solar eclipse, and so it's the end of spring. Everything has been in bloom. So here the bloom is already over and the fruits are growing. We can already feel summer coming. And so everything is slowly transitioning from spring to summer. It's kind of between 2 seasons, and this new moon is in the sign of Gemini, which is a sign of learning, sharing with others, gathering skills and information. So it's usually a very social time, but because it's an eclipse, it kind of eclipses the energy of this sign in a way, and it's not our usual Gemini new moon, which I think makes sense with where we are kind of globally in the world, trying to figure out how to get out again, how to be with people again, and at the same time needing to heal a lot of what has happened in the past year. So the sun, the moon, and the earth are aligned, and the eclipse is visible, like depending on where you are, it's visible in the northern part of the world, so in northern Canada, in Russia, and like the northern parts of Europe, you can also see it, at least partially. But even if it's not visible, it's still a pretty strong astrological moment. And there's an invitation with this eclipse, as with every eclipse, but this one in particular, to retreat and figure out some things for yourself, which I think is an interesting theme, because, well, I don't call my brand and my podcast Knit Pose for nothing. I think there's a really deep power in the pose and the idea of taking time to rest and to create from this space of rest and pose. So that's what we will be exploring today. So 3 creative invitations. The first one is to just go dark and retreat. So the new moon in general is always kind of the moment of pose in the moon cycle. So the moment where the moon is dark, and like everything is kind of on pause, and we can also take this time to rest, to be in the dark, to retreat, and to let new intentions come to us. It's a moment of dream, and so about enjoying the power of darkness, and because it's an eclipse, it's kind of renewed and even more stronger. So maybe you need to take some time off if you have the privilege to do this this week, to take a day off, to take a night off, to take a few minutes off for yourself, to retreat from things that maybe overwhelm you, especially like information overwhelm, like social media or or from like a desire to always be learning and gathering new techniques and skills. Maybe this isn't a time for that, but more a time to step away from it. If you've been learning a lot of new techniques in your knitting, for example, maybe it's a time to take a step back and reflect on it and see what fits, how it makes you feel. And so sometimes stepping away from something can help you find the value of it really for itself and not for what you think it can bring you or what others value or others say about it, but really to figure it out for yourself. And that's really precious, to find those spaces to do that and to tune into yourself and figure out what you want to do in your creative life or creative practice. And so maybe you need even to like stop knitting for a few days and do another activity. I know that sometimes it helps. I rarely stop knitting, but when I do stop knitting for a few days or sometimes weeks, it kind of helps to get a new perspective sometimes on it and figure out what project I want to do and why I'm knitting in the first place. So realizing, for example, that I feel less boastful at the end of a few days without knitting will make me want to come back to knitting and be eager to come back to knitting because I really do knit it and find the value in it again. So that can be an idea. The second invitation, creative invitation, kind of goes with it. It's learn to do nothing, which is kind of counterintuitive for a lot of reasons. But when we're knitting, we aren't actually doing nothing because we are making things. So we are creating a physical piece, a material piece. But because we are creating in a way that is so slow, it still kind of opposes the injunction of productivity that we have constantly when we're living in a capitalist system. And so there's so there's something interesting about the fact that knitting isn't doing nothing, but is still doing in a way that is unproductive, in a way. And sometimes often, we still get this like not desire, but this want to be productive with our knitting. We'll list all the projects that we want to make. We'll put deadlines on ourselves and be like, oh, I want to knit 10 Christmas gifts next year or things like that, and then stress ourselves out because we want it to be productive when it's something not very productive in nature. Like if we want to have clothes fast, there are other ways to have clothes way much faster than making them. So that's not the reason why we're making them most of the time. And so like myself, even something like that happened, and I think it happens to most people who work in like creative fields. But with my designs, at some point, I had this idea that I needed to release and to create and release new designs very often to keep people interested, to give new patterns to my audience, and also like for myself to have this this routine, this system to do my patterns in this way and release them in this way and create a new pattern each month. And it quickly became like undoable because I wasn't actually feeling creative in this process because it was too strict and not like I need more fluidity in the way I create, I found out. And so I stopped doing those like pattern each month and allowed myself to be in a place where I didn't release patterns for a while, and that's still what I do these days. Like I have a few patterns planned in advance, but for the rest I will just let things happen when they happen. It's not I don't have an obligation, I don't put obligations on myself to create this at this time. And sometimes I even won't have a design on my needle, which would have been impossible before because I always had a design going on. And having those spaces of pause in between design, the spaces of doing nothing or nothing like productive in the way that it is for my business, was so helpful, and it makes me feel way more creative when I actually do a design. So that was my story, but I don't know if maybe that resonates with you in a way, and you can ask yourself the question of what it means to you to connect to being unproductive, and so what does it mean to you when you pause between projects, or when you enjoy the process a little more instead of looking at the results always. And we often talk about like process knitters versus product knitters, but I think we're a bit of both, and we are all knitting because we're enjoying the process in one way or another, otherwise we wouldn't be doing it. So those can be things to ponder, and I have a cat coming back again. Hi. That's not even the same cat as before, so there's always a red cat in here. So my third creative invitation for you is to connect to the source of your creative power, and so that's kind of the energy of the new moon, and the eclipse is to create to the source of creativity, and the idea that creativity happens first in the dark. So when we think about our dreams at night, about like the studios, the photography studio where it all happens in the dark room, and that's where creativity comes from. And I think this holds a lot of truth when we think about how ideas come to us, and it doesn't have to be very literal about like being at night or in a dream, but there's a way in which often ideas will come when we pause and retreat, when we take time to allow them to come and not try to force them out. So this idea of connecting to the source of your creative power is about connecting for yourself first, because we so often tend to define ourselves depending on others, like how others see us, or depending on what we can produce, so having a sense of like our worth because of what we produce, and so this idea is about like going in the opposite direction and figuring out what you want to do for yourself. Where does your creative expression come from? What do you express when you knit? And connecting to the idea that you are already creative, that your source of creative power is in you, and it doesn't have to come from anyone or anything else. And when you're knitting, when you're posing, when you're taking the time, you're allowing it to awaken and for ideas to come to you. And one thing that I want to stress out with this idea is like every time I say everyone is creative, we are all creative, creativity is everywhere, all around in us, there's always like people arguing with that. And one thing that I want to say is that there's a big difference between creative and inventive, and you don't have to be inventive to be creative. Like you don't have to invent new things, to create new stitch patterns, new designs, to make your own like colorway of yarn, to be creative. Just the fact that you're doing something creative, something that allows you to express yourself and to put of yourself through stitches into a piece of fabric that you will then wear or give to someone, and the whole like value that it has, and the whole story and and time and love that you put into it, that's already like so much creativity. You don't have to be the most inventive person to be creative. You are already creative. And to me, being creative is about being yourself and doing what makes you feel good and what makes you inspired when you knit. So if you're knitting from a place of making what makes you feel inspired and what allows you to express yourself, then that's like pure creative power to me. So this is an invitation to connect to that idea and to reflect on what you express through your knits and where your creative power is, and to align all of your creative projects to that, and maybe let go of some who aren't aligned with how you want to express yourself. So those were my creative invitations for you today. So now I have prepared our guided meditation. So this is a meditation to pause and kind of connect to the darkness and this idea of creation happening in the dark, and really just take a moment of deep rest together. So if you need a moment to readjust, to go grab something to drink before the meditation, feel free to do so now, and we'll be back in a minute with this lovely cat. And so when you're ready, I invite you to start the meditation by turning inward, and you can start by closing your eyes if that feels comfortable to you, and if not, you can simply keep them open with a soft gaze. And take a moment to reconnect to yourself and start by observing the rhythm of your breath. Feel the breath going in and out, and connect to your own natural rhythm of breath. You can observe it for what it is today, and there's no need to change anything. Connect also to the sensations of your breath in your body in this moment. Feel how your breath moves, how it flows. And connect finally to the states of your emotions, the state of your thoughts and feelings passing by, and just observe them as they are. Observe how you are feeling today. You are now entering the space of pause, a space that you are making just for you for the next few minutes. Feel how wide it is, this space of pause, how it can expand with each breath that you take and each moment that you spend here, relaxing, pausing, resting. Take a moment to connect to the ground beneath your feet. Feel how it supports you. Feel how strong it is. It is the same ground that has always supported you, always been there. The same ground that gathers us, knitters from all over the world in this virtual space of pose. The same ground also that supported and fed our ancestors. On the same earth, under the same moon. take a moment to feel yourself slowing down to the rhythm of the earth, and get in tune with that slow rhythm of this nourishing earth, source of all life. In the sky, the moon and the sun are coming into alignment, covering their light to offer us a place of darkness. And as their light fades out, we get to pause for a moment. We get to rest. Imagine yourself for a moment in this dark sky, with the stars still shining, so many of them, so bright and so far away. Visualize those stars, feel them around you. Take a moment to truly connect to them, to the ones that shine brightly, the ones that you know well, and all the ones that you can barely see. But they are still all there, all around. And with our own star, the sun, they are all making their intricate dance in the sky, with each season, each cycle, moving so slowly. What is a year in the life of a star? What is a month? A day? What is a breath in the life of a star? Take a moment to rest in this beautiful dark sky, under the light of the stars. As you are slowing down in this space of pause, you get to experience a different version of time. A version of time where everything is a cycle and where everything moves so slowly. And you get to change your own perspective and see things in a different light. With the light of the sun being out, there's only the lights of the stars. What new perspective are you looking for in your creative life? Where can you look at things differently? Where does a different light help you? And it's okay if you don't have answers right now. Just asking is often enough. Because when you're asking questions, when you're reflecting in this space of pause, you are connecting in a much deeper way to your own creative power, your own spark of inspiration, of creativity, which is sometimes so small at the beginning that you can only see it and grasp what it's about in full darkness when the light is eclipsed. So take a moment to enjoy this power of the dark, to be fully with it, to enjoy how it nourishes you, how it replenishes you. Remember that creation happens first in the dark. And here in this darkness, you can just rest. Just rest. When you're ready, you can slowly come back to your breath and let your next few breaths bring you back to your body. Come back gently to the sensations, to the space around you, and take a moment to see, to notice how you are feeling after this moment of deep pause. Are you relaxed? Are you inspired? Are you energized? Are you calm? Or anything else, whatever it is, let the feelings come to you and be with those feelings for a moment. And then, whenever you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes again. Thank you so much for sharing this moment of meditation with me. I hope that you enjoyed it. And this concludes our episode. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment if things came to you that you feel like sharing. I always love hearing about what came to you during the meditation or how these creative meditations might have inspired you. And if you want to make room in your life for some more moments of deep pause and creativity and connection, the doors to my quarterly home retreats are currently open for just a few weeks. We start on June 20th, so it's only for a small group of passionate knitters from all over the world, and this is exactly what we do in this group. Take some moments, like much needed moments, to pause and connect and create together. So I hope to see you there. I'll put the link in the comments if you want to check it out, and don't hesitate if you have any questions. I'm always here to answer any of them. So I wish you some very happy knitting poses, and I'll see you back here on the next new moon.